among them. The future of the world order is being decided today, and it is clear to any impartial objective. The question is whether or not it is going to be the kind of order with one hegemon at the head of it, making everyone else living, following his notorious rules of benefit to that hegemon only, or are we going to have a democratic, fair world without blackmail and without setting fear into the unwanted, without neo-Nazism and neo-colonialism? We made a firm choice for the latter, and together with partners and like-minded people, calling upon everyone to work for its implementation. What is receding into the past is a unipolar model of world development which served the interests of the 1 golden billion, and its overconsumption level came from the resources of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Today, we're witnessing sovereign states ready to defend their national interests, and this results in the creation of an equal, socially oriented, and sustainable multipolar architecture. But the objective geopolitical processes are being seen by Washington and fully subjugated to it. The elites of Western countries are considered by them as a threat to their dominating position. The United States and allies want to stop the march of history. So at some point in the past, declaring that they were victorious in the Cold War, Washington erected themselves into an almost envoy of God on earth, without any obligations, but only the sacred right to act with impunity wherever and wherever they want. And this can be done anywhere against any state, especially if they're somehow displeased the self-proclaimed masters of the world. And we do recall the wars of aggressions very far from American shores in Yugoslavia, in Iraq, and Libya, which claimed many hundred thousands of peaceful lives. Were the truly legitimate interests of the West were impacted in any one of those countries? Was English banned or any other language of NATO countries banned there? Mass media, culture? Were the Anglo-Saxons declared to be subhuman, or heavy weaponry was used against them? So what is the outcome of the adventurism of the United States in the Middle East? Has a human rights situation improved? Is the rule of law better? The socioeconomic situation may perhaps stabilized, or people's livelihood is better? Name a country where Washington interfered by force and where, as a result of that, life improved. Trying to restore a one-polar model under the slogan of a rules-based order, West is introducing dividing lines everywhere along the lines of a confrontation between blocs. You're either with us or against us. There is no third option possible. There are no compromises. Continuing with the course to spread NATO to the east and bringing the military infrastructure of NATO to the borders of Russia, the United States now have the goal of subjugating the Asian areas. At the June summit of NATO in Madrid, the self-proclaimed defensive alliance declared the indivisible security of Euro-Atlantic and India and Pacific. And under the slogan of India-Pacific strategies, closed formats are being created, and they undermine what has been built under the ASEAN for decades, namely an open and inclusive regional architecture. And in addition to that, they're playing with fire around Taiwan. On top of that, they're promising military support to Taiwan. Clearly, the notorious Monroe Doctrine is becoming global in scope. Washington is trying to turn the entire world into its own backyard. And the way of doing this is through unlawful unilateral sanctions, which have been for many years used in violation of the Charter and used as a tool of political blackmail. The cynicism here is obvious because these restrictions hit civilians. They prevent them from getting access to basic goods, including medication, vaccines, and food. An egregious example we have here is the American blockade of Cuba, more than 60 years old. The General Assembly has been for a long time and insistently demanding that be immediately lifted, and this is being done by the absolute majority of voices. The Secretary General, whose duty include helping implement General Assembly decisions, must, of course, pay special attention to this issue. The Secretary General has a special role also in mobilizing efforts to overcome food and energy crises, which resulted in the wake of an out-of-control money emission in the United States and the European Union during the pandemic, and as a result of irresponsible, unprofessional acts by the European Union in the hydrocarbon fuel markets. Despite common sense, Washington and Brussels compounded the situation when they announced economic war against Russia. As a result, there is a growing price on foodstuffs, fertilizers, oil, and gas. We welcome the efforts made by the Secretary General when they helped arrive at the Istanbul agreements on the 24th of June, but they need to be implemented. But so far, the ships with the Ukrainian grain go somewhere, but not into the poorest countries, on the one hand. On the other hand, the impediments by U.S. and EU, the financial and logistical impediments against our grain and fertilizers, have not been lifted. Furthermore, for several weeks, we have been saying that about 300,000 tons of fertilizer are being held up in European ports, and we have been proposing that they be forwarded free of charge to the needy countries in Africa. But the European Union is not heeding this. The official Russophobia in the West is unprecedented now. The scope is grotesque. They're not shying away from declaring the intent to inflict the military defeat on our country, but also to destroy and fracture Russia. In other words, what they want to do is to remove from the global map a geopolitical entity which has become all too independent. So how have Russia in the